many of us are now relying on some sort of asynchronous delivery of our course content. And the predominant version of this is to use pre-recorded lectures that you then upload to your learning platform and expect your students to engage with. There are really strong benefits of doing so. There's improved flexibility, it's lectures on demand, improved accessibility because students can access those lectures from wherever they happen to be. And you can actually improve equity as well by offering things like English captions and perhaps even foreign language subtitles as well. Despite all these really strong advantages, there is a significant challenge with asynchronous pre-recorded lectures, and it relates to engagement. Um, the data I'm going to show to you in just a moment will show that a lot of students really struggle watching a pre-recorded lecture. There is a fix. You don't have to change your content at all. You just need to change your delivery of that content. Before I move on, there is a QR code up on the screen here. If you scan that, you'll get to a landing page. Ignore the opening blurb and the different tabs that you have there. Just click on those, and there'll be a host of different strategies that I've trialed in my undergraduate teaching. And those that have been particularly effective and really worked, I've uploaded onto this web page. So feel free to check it out. You never know, there might be something there that you can use yourself. At the very least, there'll be something there that might actually get you reflecting and come up with an even better solution for your own particular context. Okay, so the context of the data, it's from a third year undergraduate course in the School of Biological Earth and Environmental Sciences at UNSW Sydney. It's animal behaviour, so it's a very evocative topic and it's a very popular course. The course is moderate sized. It fluctuates between 40 to 80 students, but these days, in the last few years, it's been more towards that upper end of about 80, in some cases 90 students. The entire course is asynchronous and online. I took one year the opportunity to have a look at the analytics associated with these pre-recorded lectures. Um, and I was horrified by what I saw. Even at the start of the course, only two-thirds of the class were actually watching these lectures in full. By the end of the course, this has dropped down to less than half. Now, I was horrified by this, and I had to find a quiet place to sit down and reflect on what's going on here. But I would challenge you to have a look at your own analytics if you're using pre-recorded lectures, and I suspect you'll see something very similar to what I've got up on the screen here. And the reason being is because, look, recording a 50-minute lecture for yourself is exhausting, right? Just imagine what it's like for students to watch, and they've also got multiple pre-recorded lectures to get through as well. So it's exhausting for them. It's also quite boring for them as well, regardless of what the topic might be. The solution is to use exactly the same content, just deliver it in a different way, this interactive video content. I'll explain what this is in just a moment. The engagement will be vastly improved. Even that kind of towards the end of the course there's at the very least 80% of the students are watching these lectures from the very start all the way to the very last second. So it's significant improvement on the traditional 50-minute pre-recorded lecture. All right, what is an interactive lecture? Simply just use shorter pre-recorded videos and marry it with H5P, where you can create all sorts of different types of activities that then prompt that interaction with students with this pre-recorded lecture. There are two different versions. The first one I call a lecture sandwich. This is simply using exactly the same content, just breaking it up into smaller pieces. You introduce a particular concept, for example, you then follow that with an activity that reinforces that concept or elaborates on it, and then moves into another short video and another activity, for example, a multiple choice quiz. The variety of different activities is quite broad. So there's a host of different things that you could use. Now, here's an example in my introductory lecture. I've just introduced the science of how do you study animal behavior. And I've introduced these two these four topic areas. And it's a drag and drop exercise, right? It's really basic, and students get immediate feedback about whether they got it right or wrong, and they can redo it and they can rewatch the shorter video, and they're more likely to watch a shorter video, rewatch it if they need to get clarification. So it really helps improve active learning as well in this asynchronous format. So it's a really quite effective strategy. The second more complex version of interactive lecture is the self-directed investigation. So think a choose your own adventure. So when I was a kid, and I'm probably dating myself here, we had these books called literally Choose Your Own Adventures. For example, there was a book on the exploring the Cave of Time. There was a storyline where you're the central character. You enter the Cave of Time. You're presented with a choice of going left or right at a particular junction. If you want to go left, go to page 50. If you want to go right, go to page 10. And you can progress through the story, selecting these different options and create your own adventure as a consequence. You can do the same thing for your lecture. And it's particularly effective if you're discussing a topic that's quite controversial, that has multiple viewpoints, or is quite complex and needs some sort of exploration, or if you're introducing a conceptual problem that has a variety of different solutions and that can be elaborated and built on as you proceed through the lecture. So here's an example in one of my lectures, the neuroethology lecture, and I'm talking about the challenges of animals finding their way home. They leave home base, they randomly walk out into the environment to forage, for example, and they still need to find their way back to their home base. How do they do that? There's various different ways that animals do this. Students are then presented with how do they solve the direction problem? Could it be this or could it be that? And then they select their option, and then they get presented with another video that explores that option, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, the different types of animals that might use that particular approach, and what are the benefits and what are the costs associated with that. And so students can progress through the lecture choosing their own adventure, if you will. So post-course surveys show that the students vastly prefer the interactive lecture. They particularly like the lecture sandwich option because it's relatively straightforward. It forces engagement because the students have to click on the screen, but of course, it reinforces the content as well. The self-directed investigation was also very popular, but a little bit less so. And when I explored this with the students, I discovered that some students are a little apprehensive about, essentially having to think during a lecture, and certainly not have ever experienced having to make decisions about the lecture as well. So some students do find that a little confronting. So you do have to do some little bit of pre-groundwork before you introduce that particular method for them, because they've never seen it before, so they're not used to it. There's a small portion of students that prefer that 50-minute traditional pre-recorded lecture. I looked into that as well, and it turns out that majority of these, or all of them, were mature age students. They're quite used to passive learning of sitting in a lecture hall, taking notes. That's what they're used to. That's what they prefer. Other than those handful of students, the vast majority prefer the interactive, and the reason being is quite simple, because they find it vastly more engaging. It's the way they're designed, right? It improves focus because, they have to focus on what's going on to then complete the activities. An unanticipated benefit is that it improves flexibility as well, because there are natural stop points that students can get up, take a break, or return to, and it's a lot easier. And it's also easier for them to rewatch small portions of the lecture. So it improves comprehension as well. And I've already presented here the information on the engagement as well. Significant improvement on engagement. Students are watching the lecture from the very start all the way to the very end and the very last second. So again, I've got the QR code up on the screen here. Scan it, have a look at the different tips that I've tried to use. And you never know, there might be something there that you can use. Again, at the very least, you might get some inspiration about an even better method than I've actually solved.